blind hem can be accomplished in a few little steps on the Baby Lock Joy. The first thing that we're going to do is use our blind hem foot, and this is a standard accessory with the machine. You'll notice that it has the letter G, and that you'll find a plastic guide and kind of what I would call a little thumb screw. Let's place the foot on our machine. It will make it a little easier to show you how that guide works. Now when you pull your foot out of the plastic bag in the first initial use, you'll see that the plastic guide is very close to the edge of the foot. If I turn this little thumb screw towards me, that will move. As you can see, the guide is moving further away from this edge. When we're creating that blind hem, what we will be doing is we will be butting our fabric up against this plastic edge. So depending upon the fabric or the stitch that you're using, you're going to be playing with this thumb screw to get that plastic guide or rail where you need it. Now let's take a look at the stitch that we're going to use. We're actually going to, if we look at our stitch chart here, there are two blind hem stitches that are ideal. The first one is E, and I use this one a lot for stretch stitches, and the next one is H, which is used for woven, which I will use on cottons, medium to lightweight, and also wools, and lighter weight home deck fabrics. The next thing I want to do is I actually want to adjust my width to its widest setting of 5. That will give me the ideal setting for that stitch. We're going to leave our stitch length on 2.5, but the next thing we need to do is we actually need to change our stitch, and we're going to go to stitch number H by turning that dial. Now we're on stitch number H. To fold our fabric, I think this is always the hardest part for most individuals to understand. The first thing that you're going to want to do is fold up your hem. And what I do then is on the right side of my fabric, I look at my fabric piece and I fold it back in a sense towards that print or my folded edge for my hem. And then I have what I call the lip. Okay, this is the lip and this is the fold. The fold is what is guided against your guide on your blind hem foot. Now, oftentimes I get the question of, I have a raw edge here and I don't want that in my finished project. What I suggest is using a very narrow stitch on a serger, like a 2-thread or 3-thread narrow overlock stitch, or you could possibly use a pinking shear. That will take care of that edge, that raw edge from actually raveling. Ready to stitch, and I always do a practice run with my fabric just to ensure that I get my guide set up. Now if you take a look, I am biting just a little bit too much fabric. So what I'm going to do is take my needle out of my fabric, I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I'm actually going to dump move my guide closer in. And what that will do is it doesn't allow the peak of that stitch to grab too much of that fabric fold. So I move that guide in, and let's just take a look and see. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I just want that peak just to catch that fold. That's the premise of a blind hem. It basically is, in a sense, blind. You don't see it on the outside. You might see a little bit of those peaks, but you don't see a whole lot. And that's where you would use a matching fabric. Where I use this a lot, or where I have used it in the past, is I needed to hem something and then I covered up that hem, such as a cuff or possibly a sleeve. I'm coming to the end. I'm going to stop, take my needle out of my fabric. Going to raise my presser foot, use that thread cutter on the side of the machine, and let's take a look at our blind hem stitch on the wrong side. Can you see these are the peaks that I was talking about, that you just want them to graze that fold. They have to catch that fold, because if they don't, you're not going to have a hem. And then you see the vertical portion of that seam runs along those peaks. Let's take the big reveal and let's take a look. Now, because I used hot pink thread on hot pink fabric, you don't really see my peaks, but if you come in real close, there's one of my peaks here. It's almost invisible. It's just very tiny, and it's just caught that edge of that fold. If I take this to the iron and press this out, I will press out that crease and I will have a beautiful blind hem. As you can see, with a few little tips, tricks, and setting up your Baby Lock Joy, creating that blind hem is easy.